Until today, this pandemic continues in making the lives of everyone on the planet miserable. The virus prevalent in the country has disrupted the economy and brought agony to many after more than 10.9 million Filipino workers lost their jobs and had lower incomes and working hours since the pandemic started. Considering all these dreadful and atrocious situations, it made me question the credibility and reliability of our government. Are the response of our government towards COVID-19 enough, or is it insufficient? And for me, it is insufficient. It is in fact a delinquency and a big fallacy. Implementation of community quarantine is the first step the government has taken in order to stop the spread of the novel coronavirus. But the problem here is that the implementation is too late. Only if the government have taken advanced precautionary measures the moment we heard about this deadly and communicable disease, we could have prevented the escalate of the virus inside the country. Now, Philippines has the longest lockdown not only in Asia but in the whole world. But we remained at the very bottom of the list when it comes to COVID-19 suppression. Second point, inappropriate allotment of funds. Instead of providing crucial and substantial funds to hospitals, medicines, facilities, and medical workers, the President is prioritizing his fights against the critics of his administration. In fact, amidst the pandemic, he managed to allocate 19 billion to the National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict. Billions of peso that would have been more significant if it had been allocated into mass testing and contact tracing, which is one of the slowest and sluggish programs of the government when it comes to COVID-19 containment. In crises like this pandemic, we need leaders who are really capable in leading their citizens. In the midst of a raging pandemic, the government and all other stakeholders are scaling up efforts to ensure that education continues in the country. Last year, the Department of Education addressed the challenges brought by coronavirus disease in the basic education for school year 2020-2021 through its Basic Education Learning Continuity Plan under DepEd Order No. 012 Series of 2020. DepEd initiated different learning modalities, which includes online learning, modular learning, and blended learning, to ensure that education will still reach students amidst the pandemic. But it seemed like the preparations made aren't enough. It's like they were complacent that they can keep up with the new education system, but in reality, our schools aren't ready enough to adapt online learning and distance learning. Modular learning is the most basic and doable of the learning continuity plan. It caters majority of learners, but big budget is needed for module printing. The estimated cost of module printing for a year, according to DepEd, is 74.6 billion pesos, while their conservative computation comes 50.4 billion. But the agency has so far only received a stingy 15 billion provision in the 2021 National Expenditure Program. So due to the lack of funds, the plan to meet the 1:1 module set to students ratio is impossible. That is why a module sharing scheme is being forced upon learners. Besides from the lack of budget for modular learning, as we embrace the so-called new normal education, online learning has continued to be a scourge not only for students but also for teachers and other education staffs. Not only it is hard to use, but internet connection remains the #1 problem. Before, education was seen as a gateway to a brighter future, but now it is seen as a burden to the poor and an advantage to the affluent. Our schools aren't ready for the challenges of the new normal education. On March 11, 2020, COVID-19 was declared as a pandemic by the World Health Organization after it spreads like a wildfire all around the globe, infecting millions, killing thousands, and rapidly affected everything. This pandemic created significant knock-on effects on the daily life of people, as well as businesses, works, and education. It also gradually slowed down the global economy and disrupted the world trade and movements, leaving many countries submerged in debt. And it seems like we can't do anything but just watch on how the pandemic will reshape the future. The pandemic might leave a fragile economy, and it would take years for countries to recover, because significant economic impact has already occurred across the globe due to reductions in income, a rise in unemployment, and disruptions in the transportation, service, and manufacturing industries. Advanced preventive and preparedness measures must be taken the soonest possible time to mitigate the future impacts of this pandemic on economy. There will be global resources shortages and problems, and global supply chains, wages, and productivity might occur, and challenges like climate change and epidemics might also be possible. There are numbers of possible futures. It all depends on how world leaders and society handles and respond to their situations and the pandemic's aftermath, and how they will use this crisis to rebuild and produce something better and more unique.